In the Dharma Expanse Palace of Akanishta is the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Guru. Please bless me and all sentient beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. Now please think to yourselves that we are discussing the Dharma, listening to and teaching the Dharma this evening in order to bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings throughout space to the state of Buddhahood, the only state that is truly free of suffering. And in order to do that, we need to practice the Dharma, but in order to practice the Dharma, we have to know what we're doing, so we listen to and contemplate the Dharma. So please listen this evening with this motivation of bodhicitta. And the Dharma that we are discussing is the collection of Dharma talks of GAMPOPA called A String of Pearls. And as I spoke about a little bit on the first day, these talks are a collection of talks that GAMPOPA gave to his students, many of them great meditators who already had very high levels of meditation already. And they were recorded by his nephew, Lama Gongsu, and then collected in this talk as GAMPOPA gave them. And so it's like we have a little chance to watch a video from the 12th century, so to say. It's not quite the same as a video, as I suppose, but it has lasted for all these times. So we have the chance to listen to and think about the words that GAMPOPA himself taught to his students. And so today we have come to the 14th of these talks, and so I will begin as usual by first reading it, and then I'll go through and speak about a few of the different points. The talk begins. As for the Dharma, I would like to share with you all, those who have put this life out of their mind and who strive toward the next life should request from an exalted Guru the instructions on merging self and other. To practice them, whether they are explained as the 9 vehicles of the Nyingma, the 4 tantras of the Sarma secret mantra, the 3 precious baskets from the vehicles of the characteristics, the 3 vehicles, 4 stages, and 9 yogas of the essence cycle, or the 2 or 4 truths. To summarize, all the conduct of a Dharma practitioner is included in the 4 ways to digest food, the 3 ways to take the ground, and the 2 types of conduct. These include all the conduct of a Dharma practitioner. With food, quite a lot comes to the Sangha, to gurus who have faith, and so forth, and there are 4 ways to digest it. The best yogis have confidence in the view at the level of their realization, so clinging to appearances as true has collapsed, and they realize that appearances have no nature. Thus they are free of thoughts of food as good or bad and digest it naturally. This is digesting through realization, the best. The next is digesting through meditation. Though dullness and agitation generally should be remedied by a meditation such as Tummo, here all the external faults have been naturally dispelled by the meditation on the channels and winds themselves. From meditating on the channels and winds, all qualities dawn free of center or edge like space. Digesting through that is the middling yogi. The next is digesting through the meditation on loving kindness and compassion in equipoise and post-meditation. After you have habituated yourself to equipoise for a long time and preceded it with loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, when samadhi first emerges, like the moon on the first day of the month, you merely see the essence of mind. When that happens, in post-meditation, cognitions that cling to truth decrease, and you digest in that way. That is the lesser middling yogi. Next is the yogi who digests through effort at spiritual practice with bodies and speech, continually practicing creation and completion in the 4 sessions, or prostrating, circumambulating, making tormas, and recitation. This is the lowest. Thus there are 4, the best, the 2 middling, and the lowest. There are 3 ways a Dharma practitioner takes the ground. Taking the ground by continuously doing a mountain retreat is the best. Taking the ground by walling oneself in is middling. Taking the ground by receiving teachings and transmissions and keeping vows is the lowest. With the 2 types of conduct, the better is, in addition to remaining within Dharma, doing whatever benefits sentient beings. The lower is to be peaceful and subdued in conduct, inspiring faith in others. In this way, the 4 types of digesting food and the 3 ways of taking your ground are important. The 2 types of conduct are essential. That being so, all you monks do not just digest your food any which way. You will not even be counted among the ranks of Dharma practitioners. So you must have one of those methods. Staying in a town where mental diversions arise and staying in a place where vows and samaya are not kept by both you and others in going to the lower realms. If you do not have Dharma yourself, you will denigrate others. So these 3 ways a Dharma practitioner takes the ground are important. If you do not have either of the 2 types of conduct, you will not benefit either yourself or others. Thus have the vows in your being and be subdued in body, speech, and mind to benefit beings. Among these, it is absolutely crucial for a practitioner to have one of the ways of digesting food, one of the ways of taking the ground, and both types of conduct. When they come together, benefit beings and practice for the sake of yourself and others. As the scripture says, entering the path to accomplish great aims for self and another, by that great auspiciousness may there be joy and goodness here and now. Benefiting others accomplishes great benefit for yourself. That is exactly it. So that is what is called great auspiciousness. Practice like that. There is no Dharma than that. So in this talk, GAMPOPA is talking to his students, and we have to remember in listening to this that his students were all people who joined him at the remote place of Daha Gampo in Tibet. So it's they had already basically gone off to go and retreat. And yet even when they had come to a remote place like that, they still needed to be reminded what they have to do. So here, when GAMPOPA is talking to them, he's speaking primarily about the ways that they need to be outside of meditation. Of course, it's understood in this talk that people are going to do their meditation as well as they can during the sessions. But what are the external circumstances outside of the meditation that we need for meditation to go well? And so GAMPOPA talks about 3 of them. There's the methods for digesting food, the 4 ways to digest food, the 3 ways to take the ground, and the 2 types of conduct. So 4 ways to digest food. This sounds a little bit strange to us at first, but we have to think about it a little bit and remember that for GAMPOPA and his direct students, they were all living off of alms, off of food that they had begged for and received, or that faithful sponsors had given them. And so when you were given food, if someone gives you a nice bit of food and says, okay, here's your, if you're Tibetan, your bag of tsampa, or if you're maybe a bag of rice or something, and say, here are your provisions, now go off and practice for a month. Someone's given you that with the hope that you're going to do that. And then if instead of going off and practicing, you just lie about and enjoy the food, then actually you're not really helping the other person, you're not helping yourself, and it's actually a little bit of bad karma. It's what we call an obscuration from offerings. And so the ways to digest the food are ways to avoid that. And they depend upon the level of practitioner. And these are also, again, taught in terms of people who have already devoted their lives to Dharma practice, like, and to people who have already achieved levels of realization that we may or may not have. But I think here there are the 4. There's the one, there are those who have the complete realization or the high realization. They have no thoughts of food as good or bad and digest it naturally. So these are people who digest through realization. Then there are people who have purified their beings through meditating on channels and winds. So that is the middling yogi. And then there are people who have great meditation, loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta, and are able to begin to see the nature of mind. That's the third level. And then there's the lowest level. And this is the yogi who digests through effort at spiritual practice with body and speech, continually practicing creation and completion in the 4 sessions, or prostrating, circumambulating, making tormas and recitation. So this is the lowest. And I think what this means is that what he's encouraging us to do is that you do your practice on the level that you're able to do it. So again, GAMPOPA was primarily speaking to monastics who had already gone forth and started and devoted themselves to practice, so they were able to spend all their time doing practice. But most of you listening have not yet done that. You may make aspirations to do that in the future, but you have not yet, and so you're still engaging in a daily life. So while you're still engaging in the daily life, it's important for you to do as much practice as you are able, in a level that is appropriate for you, and then do a level that's appropriate for you, and then try to increase it a little bit. And then at the same time as you do that, when you are not actually formally practicing, you try to keep the Dharma in mind. Remember the Dharma as much as you can in your daily life. And so if you do that, that is, I think, what we can do in the regular way of life. Now, then GAMPOPA talks about 3 ways of taking the ground, and 2 of these ways are ways of doing retreat, either doing solitary retreat in a mountain or doing what they call a walled-in retreat, where a meditator will seal themselves in a room or a cave for a certain amount of time to do retreat. And for us, that's difficult. So, I mean, you might have in the future, you might have an opportunity to do a 3-year retreat, for example, which would be excellent. But in the meantime, what we do is we need to try to follow the third type, which is taking the ground by receiving teachings and transmissions and keeping vows. So this means that when you take Dharma teachings, such as you're listening to now, when you receive empowerments and transmissions, so receiving those transmissions, then also keeping the vows that you have. So for most of you, these are the lay precepts, either all 5 lay precepts, or any 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 of the any number of the lay precepts as you can. As you keep. So you keep those precepts as well as you can. You strive to study, and that's this method of taking the ground, the lowest method of taking the ground. And then there are 2 types of conduct which are important for all of us. The 2 are doing whatever to benefit you can to benefit sentient beings. That's the first. And then the second is to be peaceful and subdued in conduct. So these 2 things we have to do. The first is trying to help others, basically, doing everything we can to help, everything that's in our power, our ability to help. And when we aren't able to do something directly to benefit other beings, then we can make aspirations to be able to help sentient beings. So you might find yourself unable to do much right now, but that doesn't mean that you are useless. It means that you can make aspirations. It means that you can recite great aspirations like the king of aspirations, the noble aspiration for excellent conduct, or the aspiration from the way of the bodhisattva, or so forth. Make aspirations, and making the aspiration in itself is a helpful thing, and it will also give you the ability in the future to be able to directly benefit sentient beings. So that's what we need to do in that's the better type of conduct. And then the lower is to be peaceful and subdued. Sometimes when we see Dharma practitioners behaving, we should be able to tell that they're Dharma practitioners. You shouldn't just be loud and boisterous sometimes Dharma practitioners can be loud and boisterous, but doing it in a kind way. But best is be peaceful and subdued. Often people will see someone who looks peaceful and subdued, find out that they're Buddhist, and then be inspired to enter the path of Buddhism. So it helps others. It also helps us, because when you are being peaceful and subdued in your conduct, then you're less likely to lose control of yourself and do something careless or stupid. So that is important. So it's important to have, so among these different things, what GAMPOPA says is that we should have at least one of the ways of keeping the ground and one of the ways of digesting food. But what's most important are the two types of conduct. So we need to devote ourselves as much as we can to helping others and to try to be peaceful and subdued. So that is the main point in this talk. If we do this, this will bring auspiciousness. So we always talk about tashi in Tibetan. Tashi means like excellent, wonderful. And we usually translate this as auspicious in English, which sort of thinks about the future, bringing good things into the future. But if we try to do this as much as we can now, then we will be happy now, and we will be happy into the future. And that is what we really mean by auspiciousness. So that is the first of the talks I want to go through today. And then the second talk, to read the talk, it begins, "As for the Dharma, I would like to share with you all. When you have truly been practicing the Dharma, there's no way you won't realize death and impermanence. This life is impermanent. There's no one who's been born but will not die. So no matter what, death is certain. We don't know whether we will die now or later. Life has no fixed length, so we do not know when we will die. Because the body has no essence, we do not know when we will die. There are many causes of death. Food sustains the body, but choking on food can be a cause of death. We clothe this body in clothes, but smothering it with clothes can be a cause of death, and so on. All of the favorable conditions can be causes of death. There are innumerable other causes of death, such as enemies, water, and so forth, so we do not know when we will die. Well then, if we do not know when we will die, is there anything that can help at death? Nothing at all will help. The wealth you have accumulated will not help. Death is not fooled by a rich man's jewels. Leaving your wealth behind, you will go alone, bereft. Even being surrounded by relatives will not help at death. It will harm you later. Well then, this body supports life, so will it help at death, you wonder? Nothing at all. Your body or anything else will help. You are overconfident and don't understand. Since this is so, death is certain. When you will die is uncertain. You do not know when you will die. Nothing at all will help at death. So how can you have the time to leave spiritual training to laziness? You must practice. You must think, oh my, what time do I have to sit and relax? And plant deep in your heart a feeling of urgency, thinking, this is foolish. When practicing, you must jettison all wishes for this life and follow an authentic guru. Without a guru, it is as if the path to liberation is lost. As the scripture says, though you may have all qualities, without a guru there's no end to existence. A boat with no one at the helm will not reach the other side. Furthermore, it is also said, all the Buddhas of the 3 times appeared because of following the gurus. On the other side, where there is no guru, there is not even the word for Buddha. Therefore, follow an authentic guru and offer them your body, possessions, and all the virtue you have gathered in the 3 times. Dedicate all the virtue of the 3 times that arise from that to be shared with all sentient beings and arouse bodhicitta. Whatever faith or devotion you have for the gurus and jewels, focus all of it on the benefit of sentient beings without any wish for yourself. It is important that all the virtue you have done with body, speech, and mind be imbued with the nectar of having no focus. If you do not focus on any phenomenon, that is samadhi. As long as you have attachment to anything and a focus, that is one-pointedness. When it becomes free of focus, that is a freedom from elaboration. When you know that whatever appears is mind, that is one taste. When experience is continuous, that is the yoga of non-meditation. By practicing in that way, you will accomplish your own and others' benefit. There is no dharma but that. So this talk begins with a long passage about thinking about impermanence, remembering death, remembering impermanence. Many of the talks begin with, of these talks in this collection, many of the talks, almost all of the talks in this collection begin with a reminder of impermanence. And this one has a rather long description of why we must make sure to practice now while we have a chance. And we have to remember, we might think, oh, it's just going on about death and impermanence again. It's so tiresome to hear this. I don't want to think about it. It's no fun. It's not enjoyable. Let's get on to something, some interesting Dharma practice. Let's talk about love and compassion. Let's talk about Mahamudra or something like that. So when we look at the teachings of the great Kagyu masters, if you look at the songs of Milarepa, these talks of Gampopa, if you look at the writings of the Karmapas, if you look at the writings of the 8th Karmapa, for example, whenever they talk about high things, they often end up first and talking over and over again about impermanence, remembering impermanence. We think of impermanence as like one of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind, one of the common preliminaries that you do at the beginning and then you leave behind. But actually we don't do that because we can't do that. As Gampopa says, when you've truly been practicing the Dharma, you naturally realize impermanence. So it kind of works both ways. When you are practicing the Dharma really, then you remember that life is impermanent. You haven't got a lot of time. And in order to practice the Dharma truly, you have to remember impermanence. You have to have these two together. And this isn't just a Dharma for beginners. This is a Dharma for people on the path. This is a Dharma for people who are almost at the end of the path and for people who are at the end of the path. We need it at all stages. Rinpoche often talks about it, how we needed it. Impermanence is important because we need it in the beginning to inspire us to practice by remembering that we don't have a lot of time, that we think we might be able to practice later, but we don't know when that later is going to come. We might think to ourselves, I'll work now and then when I retire, I'll practice. Well, we have no guarantee that we're going to live until we die, live until we retire. I'm sure all of you know people who had planned to retire but didn't make it to retirement. Even if we make it to retirement, then there's no guarantee even then that we'll have enough health or enough energy to be able to practice. So we have to take the time now to do the practice that we're able to do. And that's usually a little bit more than we think we can do. But if we want to be able to practice the Dharma, if we want to be able to do something that's truly going to be able to benefit us for the long term, then we have to start by remembering impermanence and apply ourselves to our Dharma practice. Because everything that we do can be a cause of death. We can kill ourselves by choking on food. We wear clothes to keep warm and be comfortable or look good, but we can smother ourselves with clothes. Anything that we use to support our lifetime, if we do it wrong, can be a cause of death. So we have to be careful. And so we have to use this time that we have now. The time of death is certain, but the time of death is not. So we don't know if we're going to be around even tomorrow, let alone 10 or 15 years from now. So we have to make use of the time we have now. So thinking in this way is not a lot of fun. It's not an enjoyable way to spend your time. It can be kind of frightening. It can be sad. It's difficult. But the benefits of doing it are something that's really tangible. If you remember impermanence every day, then your life will get better. Not even thinking about Dharma practice, but if you really appreciate how precious an opportunity you have and the fact that it can go away at any moment, then you're going to be able to appreciate this time. And when you appreciate the opportunity you have, you're thinking about the Dharma, that'll spur you onto Dharma practice. And when you practice Dharma with that memory, with that understanding, that constant recollection of death and impermanence, then your Dharma practice is going to be more effective. It's going to be able to benefit you more. Because if we're just going and we're thinking, well, I'm going to go and do a puja, or I'm going to do puja on my own, and we just sort of thinking about it then, and it's not something we think is terribly important because we're going to really devote ourselves to it later. We're just kind of doing it now a little bit. Then that sort of Dharma practice isn't going to be all that helpful. But if we think to ourselves, this is a chance that I have. I have to take advantage of this chance because I don't know how many more chances I'm going to get. How often will I have a chance to do this? So if you practice with that understanding, this is my chance, I've got to do it now, then you're going to have a little bit more impetus to actually do your practice well. You have to remember that when you're practicing, that is what you're doing in order to get ready for the moment of death. If you haven't done anything, if you spend your entire lifetime just being distracted and enjoying yourself, then when you get to the time of your own death, you won't have anything to bring with you. As GAMPOPA and all the other texts say, your family, your friends, your money, nothing is going to help you at the time of death. But if you take the time now and gain a little bit of control of your mind, train your mind in having virtuous thoughts, train your mind in love and compassion, bodhicitta, then when you get to the moment of death, whether that be in a month, whether that be in a year, whether it be in 10 years or 100 years, or whether it be tomorrow, then you'll have something that you've done that'll prepare you for that moment. So it's really important to do it. But in order to do it, we need to have a guru, as GAMPOPA said. It's like if you're going to take a boat, he gives a quote here that he quoted in one of the earlier talks. It says, "Though you may have all the qualities, without a guru, there is no end to existence. A boat with no one at the helm will not reach the other side." So we need someone who can show us the way. We need someone like the Karmapa or Trungpa Rinpoche who can show us how do we get from here to there. Because at this point, we don't know. If we already knew, we would already have gone. But we don't know. So we need someone like Rinpoche to give us guidance and say, you should do this, you should do that. Sometimes he gives us general guidance as a group. He'll come to our Dharma centers and give us advice. Then when he gives that advice, we should listen to it carefully and do what he says. Sometimes we might have a chance really to speak to him privately, where he says, you should do this or you should do that. And so you listen to the advice and you do it because it's definitely going to be beneficial. All of the advice that the Karmapa or Rinpoche have ever given me has always turned out well. 100% of it. Even when I was certain when I got the advice that it wasn't going to turn out well, or even when I wondered how could this possibly turn out well, it always does. So they are people you can trust. You can trust Trungpa Rinpoche and his advice, and if you follow it, it'll bring you real benefit. And when you do this, you should follow them wholeheartedly. It says here, therefore, follow an authentic guru and offer them your body, possessions, and all the virtue you have gathered in the 3 times. Now, if you're going to Trungpa Rinpoche, he probably won't accept everything that you offer him. He'll tell you to save something for retirement. He would, if you give him everything, he won't take it. But what this means is that you should give yourself wholeheartedly. Usually, we're kind of holding something back. I'm not sure. I'm going to kind of do what Rinpoche is saying, but I'm not 100% sure. So you've got maybe 20% that you're giving to Rinpoche, 80% you're holding back. Maybe you've got 80% you're giving to Rinpoche, 20% you're holding back. But any little bit that you're holding back is holding you back and keeping you from going further. So we have to try to dedicate ourselves as much as we can to doing what our gurus tell us to do. Follow their instructions, do them, because they're definitely going to help. And if the more we hold ourselves back, the less benefit we're going to get. The more we do them, the more we just give them over and say, Rinpoche told me to do this, I'm going to do it. And then you do it, the more benefit it's going to have. So giving ourselves over fully to the gurus. It's not that they don't need it for themselves. It's not like it's going to be of any particular benefit for them in terms of a human benefit in this lifetime. The joy that the guru is going to get is when the guru sees you doing something that is going to help you. The guru looks, and because Rinpoche he's pretty smart. He's omniscient. He can see, he knows. He looks at people and knows what they need. And he tells you what you need, and you do it. And when he sees that you're doing what he tells you to do, and that he sees the progress you're making, he's happy. He's not happy because you're doing what he said. He's happy because you're doing well. And so there's nothing better than that. So you use that faith and devotion, do what you can to devote yourself to the Dharma practice, and then you definitely will get results. But it all has to start with appreciating this precious opportunity we have. And if we don't realize how fragile the opportunity is, we'll never appreciate it. If you're always thinking tomorrow's never going to happen. There was a pop singer, not a pop singer really, but an American singer who said, there's no tomorrow. Tomorrow never happens because there's always the next day. Always the next day. You're never going to get anything tomorrow. If you want something, you have to do it now. So in many of our Kaju texts, and particularly when we recite Guru Yoga, we will say, please bless me to develop perfect samadhi right now. Bless me to develop it on this very seat, in this very session, right now. Because this might be the only session we have, the only chance we have. This might be the only opportunity to do it. That's one thing. And the second thing is that the greater intensity we have, the greater longing we have to achieve realization, the more we're going to get out of actually doing the practice. And so that's the main thing. We have to really, truly give ourselves over to the practice. And that starts with remembering impermanence, and then following the guidance of our gurus. And this talk this talk by Gampopa then talks about how this leads into meditation and the development of meditation. And it leads into what are called the 4 yogas of Mahamudra, which are discussed in a later talk as well. So I'll just mention them here. So the first of the yogas of Mahamudra is one-pointedness. So what this means is at the beginning we start out, and our minds are out of control. So we start out, we go for refuge, we develop loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and those tame the mind. And then we develop samadhi, which is the ability to rest the mind one-pointedly. And then, so when we're doing that, at first when we do it, we have something that we're focusing our mind on. Maybe the breath, maybe an idea, maybe we're looking at a visual form. So as long as we have that sort of a focus and we think that there's something real, that is what we call one-pointedness. Then it goes to the state of being free of elaboration. And this being free of elaboration means that you no longer have any focus. You don't see things as real. You understand that they're all empty. Appearances occur, but there's no reality to them. They're like the appearances of an illusion. They're like the appearances on your computer screen that appear but are not what they seem. The images you see on the computer screen are not real. They're just play of light that happens because of causes and conditions. So when you see that all appearances are like that, that is freedom from elaboration. Not just thinking it, but actually seeing it. When you know that whatever appears is mind, that is one taste. So at the level of one taste, you no longer have an idea that things are good or bad, white, black, big, small, self, other. All of those ideas, you realize that it's all actually the same in essence. That is one taste. And because of that, you start having experiences. And sometimes you have good experiences of clarity, bliss, and insight. In non-thought, sometimes you have other experiences. But when the experiences are continuous, then that is the 4th yoga of Mahamudra, which is called non-meditation. So if you do that, then you will actually be able to benefit yourself and others. So I'd like to continue to the next talk now. As for the Dharma, I am offering you, great meditators, at this time when life is impermanent and short, you should arouse some degree of a Mahayana attitude. To summarize Dharma practice, you must practice what are called the three yogas, the yogas of mantra, substance, and Dharma. As is said in Hevadra, mantra, substance, and phenomena, if these three yogas are complete, there is no point to staying in samsaric places. The yoga of mantra is the yoga of entering the gate of any activity, such as the creation or completion, that is, visualization practices. Meditating on deity yoga is the creation phase. Knowing that the deity is like a water, moon, illusion, or rainbow is the completion phase. Similarly, if you meditate on creation and completion in union, you will complete both accumulations. Through just that, you will awaken to Buddhahood. Meditating according to the creation phase only will block the gateways to the lower realms. Meditating in that way is mantric discipline. That is the yoga of mantra. The yoga of substance is knowing that all wealth and substance are like dreams and illusions. By practicing that, clinging to appearances as true falls apart and disappears. Due to knowing they are like dreams and illusions, you will reach the levels of the Pratyeka Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The scripture says, with illusory phenomena, by meditating their illusory, you'll reach illusory Buddhahood. The yoga of phenomena is realizing that all phenomena are like the center of a clear sky, and then realizing that self and other, is and is not, and so forth, are all equal. As the scripture says, with space-like phenomena, by meditating there like space, you will reach space-like Buddhahood. That is how you should practice the three yogas. If you are interested in the activity of mantra creation and completion, do the yoga of mantra. If the yoga of substance is easier, meditate on the instructions of the dreamlike and illusory. If you are interested in the yoga of phenomena, meditate that all phenomena are like the center of space. Well then, how do you practice all three yogas on one seat? First, meditate on the creation and completion phases. Then in the four activities, or post-meditation, meditate on the dreamlike and illusory. Whatever you do afterwards, rest without mental activity, with no focus on anything like the center of space. By practicing like that, you will accomplish all benefits for yourself and others. Practice in this way. There is no Dharma but that. So here in this talk, GAMPOPA is talking about three different types of yoga. So we had four types of yoga in the previous talk, and here we have three yogas. They're just different ways of talking about yogas. We talk about yogas in many different ways. We talk about 3 yogas, 4 yogas, 6 yogas, many different sets of 6 yogas. So it really is not a big deal. They're just different ways of looking at these things. But with the 3 yogas, we've got 3, the yogas of mantra, substance, and phenomena. These are the 3. So mantra basically means doing your deity practices. So like, for example, in this day and age, it's beneficial to do medicine Buddha practice, for example. So when you do your medicine Buddha practice, you do the creation phase, which is visualizing yourself as the Buddha, as the medicine Buddha, doing the whole visualization. And then there's the completion phase, which is knowing that it is that is empty, like a water. It is just an illusion, or a water, moon, or rainbow. In other words, it's just an appearance that doesn't have any essence. There's no real there, nothing real there. It's like when you see a reflection in a lake. You see the reflection of the moon in the lake, but there's no moon in the lake, but it appears. There's nothing there, but it appears. And so that's what it's saying with the meditation on the deity. And then the second type of yoga is the yoga of substance. And this basically means thinking that all the things that we think are real substances, understanding that they're dreams and illusions, that they aren't real, that there's nothing real there. They're like different things that come together out of causes and conditions. Like, let's think about it. We often think when we're having food, we're thinking that the food that we are eating is something that is real. So what sort of food would we should think about? Well, let's think about a nice curry, a nice Malaysian curry. You've got all the different ingredients that you come. You've got your, since I don't cook Malaysian curries, I don't know what all the ingredients are in them, but you've got your vegetables, you've got your spices, you've got your coconut milk, you've got everything that you put in, and it's all separate. None of it's if you look at any of these, your vegetables, they aren't curry. You look at your spices, they're not curry. You look at the coconut milk, that's not curry. If you had any of them, you wouldn't think that you were eating a curry. But then when you heat up your wok or pan or whatever you cook it in, and it's been a long time since I've done any cooking, when you heat it up and then you cook things, you add the ingredients in the right order. You put in the ginger and the onions and then the spices, and then whatever order you put them all in, and then you cook it. Then at the end, when it's done, you'd say, this is a curry. And then you eat it. And when you eat it, it's no longer a curry. And then tomorrow morning it comes out, and it's definitely not curry then. So when you go through this whole stage, you look at it, it starts as things that aren't curry, and goes to this point where you say, this is curry, but what is there that's curry? It's just a name that you're giving to it. It's like a dream, an illusion. There's no real curry there. It's just something that looks like it, and we call by that name. And then in a few short hours, as it digests, it's going to be something entirely different. So there's no real curry there. This is what we mean when we say that things are like dreams and illusions. They come together by causes and conditions through interdependence, but there's no real essence of curry. There isn't something real that's curry. So that's the yoga of substance. Then there's the yoga of phenomena, is realizing that all phenomena are like the center of a clear sky, and then realizing that self and other, is and is not, and so forth, are all equal. So when you realize that not only are they all causes and conditions, there's nothing real about any of it. It's all kind of emptiness, like the center of space. You look up in the sky, you see there's really nothing that you can identify. The sky is a perfectly blue sky, and you can look up. And these days you look up, there's less pollution, so you can actually see really clearly. You see this blue sky on a day when there's no clouds, and you can't identify which part of the blue is the sky and which isn't. It's all the same if you're looking in the center of the sky. It's the same way when you look at phenomena. You can't really say this is it, this isn't it. It's all kind of empty. So that's the phenomena, the yoga of phenomena. And so you can either do whichever of these practices is right for you. Or you might find yourself at a point where you're listening to this and it's all like words, and it doesn't make any sense to you. And if that's the point, then you start out with the meditation on impermanence, loving kindness, compassion, and so forth. You follow the instructions of the guru, and then eventually you'll be able to do these practices. So you follow. You just look at where you are and be honest. You might think to yourself, you might hear these words by meditating that space-like phenomena are like space. You might go, wow, this is great, and think that you can meditate on them. But that doesn't mean that you can skip all the steps that have come before. You have to go through all the steps so that you'll actually be able to meditate truly on them being like space, as opposed to just having an idea. So that is the talk. So I'd like to do one more talk today. And so I'll first read the talk. As for the Dharma, I would like to share with you all. To truly practice Dharma, at this time, with our present mind, we have gained the basis of a human body. We have the 5 sensory faculties. We've been born in a place where the true Dharma has spread. Such a basis has arisen from the merit we have accumulated in past lives. Before we are stricken with a fatal illness, we must practice some Dharma. What is important for us to practice is giving up the 10 non-virtues and accomplishing the 10 virtues. Giving up the 10 non-virtues is giving up the 3 of body, the 4 of speech, and the 3 of mind. The 10 virtues are, with your body, to give up taking life, and in addition, to save as many lives as you can. Give up taking that which is not given, and in addition, give as much as you can. Give up sexual misconduct, and in addition, keep the vow of chaste conduct. With your speech, Give up lying, and in addition, teach the Dharma. There are 3 types of divisive speech: forceful, insinuating, and clandestine. Forceful divisive speech is inserting yourself where 2 parties are gathered. Insinuating divisive speech is finding a way to split them. Clandestine is covertly inserting yourself. Give those 3 up, and in addition, speak with gentle words. Give up idle chatter, and in addition, practice silence. Give up covetousness, and in addition, rejoice in others' wealth. Give up malice, and in addition, do whatever you can to help others. Give up wrong view, and in addition, confess the misdeeds you have done and meditate on rejoicing in virtuous acts. In this way, give up the 10 non-virtues and practice the antidotes, the 10 virtues and 6 transcendences. They must not be disconnected. All 6 must be complete in each. Prajna and means are unified, so when you give a gift, know that the maturation and karma are dreamlike and illusory. Know that all 6 are dreamlike and illusory. In the words of the victor, when practicing transcendent generosity, practice in a manner where even transcendent generosity is not observed, and where the focus has no attributes, or where the path has no attributes. He taught this for all 6 transcendences. Since it is so, the root or foundation of all Dharma is giving up the 10 non-virtues and accomplishing the 10 virtues, practicing the 6 transcendences for others' benefit. There is no Dharma but that. So here we have just had, the previous talk was a talk where GAMPOPA was speaking about a high view. He's talking about high practices. And here's a talk where he's talking about the 10 virtues and 10 non-virtues. Now, we might think to ourselves that in the previous talk, where he's talking about the 3 yogas and high view and space-like phenomena, that is for advanced practitioners, and that this talk is for beginners. But we have to remember that GAMPOPA was giving these talks to his great meditator students. He was giving this talk to great meditators. He was giving this talk to students who had already heard this talk over and had heard these ideas before. So it's important for us to think about that, because we might think to ourselves that the 10 virtues and the 10 non-virtues are something easy and basic. You study them once, and then you kind of forget about them. And then you move on to the profound Dharma. But it's really important for us to always keep in mind what the 10 virtues and the 10 non-virtues are. And the more we practice, I think that the more we see actually what they are, and things that we can see better what's going on in our minds as we're practicing. And as we see better what's going on in our minds, it's even more important for us to be careful about the virtues. And in particular, sometimes when we get the idea of a high view, we might think that our conduct is not so important. But it's really critical that we try to be even better people, try to be even nicer, even more virtuous people the further along we go on the path. Otherwise, we're just going to be undoing everything we tried to do by meditating or contemplating the Dharma. So right now, what GAMPOPA starts about speaking is talking about how we have a precious human body and a great, the basis of a body. So now we have to use it to practice. And what do we need to do? We need to practice the 10, giving up the 10 non-virtues and practicing the 10 virtues. So I think a lot of these are fairly easy to understand. And we also, like we begin with the one of giving up killing. So giving up killing, there's killing humans and there's killing animals. And they're a little bit different. If you have the 5 precepts, then killing animals is bad. Killing humans really breaks the vow. But killing animals is still bad. So we have to try to give up killing. I think most of us in developed societies are less likely to kill human beings, although it's not unheard of by any stretch. It's not like back in the day, shall we say, back in the old days, in many different societies, they used to be much more violent, and killing, murder was much more frequent. In developed societies, it's less frequent, but we do engage in a lot of killing of animals these days. And we engage indirectly in it by participating, by eating meat and so forth. So we have to be careful about eating, about killing. And if we eat seafood and other animals where they are killed, either we eat them raw or we eat them, they're killed for us in order right before they're cooked, and that is also counted as killing. So we should be very careful to give that up, because it's harming another sentient being directly. Stealing, giving up taking that which is not given, it doesn't just mean going out and mugging people. It also means, taking a little bit here or there from the office. What white-collar crime is also stealing. We have to be careful of that. And sexual misconduct is, I think, one of the greatest sources of pain and frustration in our lives. Very important to be careful of that. Sometimes it seems like it's not going to harm us. We think we can get away with it. But even when we think we can get away with it and we can't see any harm, no one knows. Nothing bad has happened, we think. But what happens is that we have planted a seed in our beings, and that seed is going to ripen in the future. We've been acting out of greed and lust. When we act out of greed and lust, that is going to ripen in the future as an unpleasant, a painful experience, being reborn in a place such as the animal realms or the hungry ghosts or so forth. So we have to be very careful, even if we can't directly see the result. We think that nothing's happened, but something might have happened. Then there are the 4 non-virtues of speech. And these are really important to give up. And GAMPOPA talks a lot about the different types of divisive speech. Forceful, which is where you're kind of going in and directly telling people, inserting yourself in a conversation and trying to get people to dislike each other. Or when you're insinuating, where you're kind of saying something that sounds like you're talking, sounds like you're saying something nice, but actually you're saying something that's trying to split two people apart. Like when you have 2 friends and there are 2 people you know and you're jealous of them, and so you say something to one that's kind of a little bit mean. I think you know what I'm talking about. And you say something to the other, and then you try to get them into conflict with each other. Or then there is clandestine, where you're really being secret about it. So this is really dangerous, and we have to give it up. And then we also have to give up harsh speech, which would be like insulting beings, and also give up idle chatter. And then giving up covetousness, malice, and wrong view. Covetousness and malice are like, they're like desire and hatred, but they're the ones that are actually going to, this is kind of the form of those that's actually going to get us to do action. So they're especially poisonous. And in the opposite, then we have to do not just, so when we practice giving up the 10 non-virtues and practicing the 10 virtues, the 10 non-virtues are these bad acts. And then with the 10 virtues, there are 2 levels of them. One is giving them up. And giving them up doesn't mean merely not doing them. Giving them up means making the promise, I'm not going to do them. I vow that I'm not going to do them. So it means taking like the 5 lay precepts, or taking monastic precepts, or you can take the 8 precepts or so forth. There are different levels of vows that we can take. It means taking the bodhisattva vows and keeping the precepts of the bodhisattva vow. That's one level, is avoiding the discipline, avoiding anything that's going to harm any other being, and making the promise, I'm not going to do anything that harms other beings. I'm not going to take life. I'm not going to engage in stealing or sexual misconduct or so forth. And then there's the next level, which is then doing even more. So like GAMPOPA says, in addition to giving up taking life, save as many lives as you can. So do what you can to help protect other beings' lives. Often it's very popular to do life releases, and so life releases are a good way to save life, especially if we do them in a way that is going to give the animals that we're trying to save an opportunity to live. Sometimes we go out and we go to the fish markets, we buy big live fish, and everyone wants to buy the most expensive fish, which probably came from the deep ocean. And then you buy lots of other fish, and you buy everything you can find in the fish market, and they all come from various different areas all around, all over the sea. And you go out in a boat, and then you do the ceremony and release the fish. And this is, of course, beneficial. But what happens is when you release a fish that is that grew up in the cold waters of the deep ocean, and you release it in the shallow waters by the shore, then that fish has not got much of a chance. And when you release fish that are non-native, they're going to harm the ecosystem. So be careful when you do that. Try to find fish or animals that are native to that area where you're releasing the fish, so that they have a better chance to live, and so that they don't disrupt the ecosystem and push other fish and other shellfish out of the area. So it's important to be conscious when you do it, and not just buy whatever fish looks biggest, but buy the fish that are going to survive, and do what you can in this way. And then giving up, taking that which is not giving, and in addition, give as much as you can, and so forth. So trying to do, like, instead of trying to split people apart, try to bring them together with your speech. Instead of lying, not just giving up lying, but also teaching Dharma. And instead of giving up idle chatter, practicing silence. Sometimes not saying something is the best. And instead of being covetous, then you rejoice when other people are helping. Not just not being covetous, but actively rejoicing when other people have things. And giving up malice, and then doing whatever you can to help others. So these are the ways that we can practice it. So this is actually, when we begin, we think that these are like teachings for beginners, that you do them and you learn them, and then that's kind of fine. But actually they're not. They're things that we need to practice from the beginning until the very end of the path, and even beyond. We always need to practice, be careful to practice these giving up the 10 non-virtues and practicing the 10 virtues. And then in addition, we also need to give up the 10 non-virtues and also practice the antidotes. And he speaks about these 6 transcendences. And as we spoke about in one of the earlier talks, when we practice the transcendences, we have to try to do them all at the same time and know that they're not any more real than anything else. So we don't get attached to them. So we don't want to think, we do something, a gift. For example, you do a life release, and not only do you a life release, you release animals in their own native environment that have a really good chance of surviving, and you feel to yourself, I've done a life relief, and these animals have a very good chance of surviving. This is excellent. What about me? That's good, but it could be better. What is better is realizing that you have created causes and conditions for the animals to have the illusion of continued life. The giving of the life release is like an action that comes and it goes, and then when it's gone, you can't find it anywhere. And just realizing that it's all like dreams and illusions. And if you do that, and that there's nothing to be proud about, nothing to be conceited about, you've done what you can, you dedicate the virtue, and then that is all there is to do. This is important to do this, and so when we practice any of the 6 transcendences. So this practice of the giving up the 10 non-virtues and of practicing the 10 virtues by practicing the 6 transcendences is the foundation of our path. So we must not think that it's merely something for beginners. So that is enough for today's session, and we will have one more session tomorrow. So thank you very much for listening. So now we'll recite the dedication of merit. So please think to yourself that we are listening to the Dharma and teaching the Dharma, and that doing so has been meritorious, and please dedicate the merit so that all sentient beings may be happy in the long term, ultimately reaching Buddhahood, and that in the short term, that they may be free of all illness, all dislocation, all conflict, all poverty, disease, and in particular, that those who are suffering because of the coronavirus pandemic, whether through illness or economically, may be freed of their difficulties soon. O Sanam De Tam Che Se Pani Tobne Nye Pedranam Pam Che Ne Kegana Chi Bala Trubai Sibe Tole Dro Dro Sho. Thank you.